I didn't realize the moment she said it that something between us had already started to fracture in a way neither of us could repair. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp enough to make everyone at the table go quiet. And somehow, I was the only one who didn't know yet that I had just lost her. Her name was Sloane Harrington. We were sitting in a private dining room in Charleston, South Carolina. The kind of place where the lighting is soft, the chairs are too comfortable, and conversations are supposed to stay polite. I remember the way she held her glass of wine, steady, controlled, almost calculated. I remember how her eyes didn't even look at me when she said it. Stop siding with people like them. There was a pause. Then she added, quieter but colder. It's embarrassing. No one laughed. No one moved. Across from us sat Carter Whitfield and his wife, Margot Thornton. People we had known for years. People who had quietly built a reputation in our circle for being thoughtful, if not always aligned with everyone else's opinions. The conversation had started casually. A discussion about a local development project. A zoning decision that would affect a lower-income neighborhood just outside the city. Carter had expressed concern. He talked about displacement, about families who wouldn't be able to afford to stay. I had agreed. Not aggressively, not dramatically, just honestly. Sloane didn't interrupt at first. She never did. She preferred to let people reveal themselves before stepping in. But when I nodded at Carter's point, that's when something shifted. That's when her posture changed slightly. That's when she decided I had crossed some invisible line. Ethan Calloway, she said, finally looking at me. Her voice was calm now. Too calm. You don't even understand the implications of what you're saying. I try to keep the tone neutral. I'm just saying there are real people affected by this. Margot shifted slightly in her seat. Carter leaned back, sensing tension but choosing not to interfere. Sloane smiled, but it wasn't warmth. It was precision. Of course there are, she said. There are always people. She placed her glass down slowly. But that doesn't mean every emotional argument deserves to dictate policy. I could feel the room tightening. Not outwardly, but in the way people stopped breathing fully. I'm not making an emotional argument, I said. I'm talking about consequences. And that's when she said it. That sentence. The one that would replay in my head for weeks afterward. Stop siding with people like them. Then the final cut. It's embarrassing. Before we go further, tell me honestly, if you were in that moment, sitting across from someone you love, being spoken to like that in front of others, would you have pushed back or stayed quiet to keep the peace? I didn't respond immediately. Not because I didn't have something to say, but because I was trying to understand what had just happened. This wasn't about zoning laws. This wasn't about Carter. This was about something deeper. Sloane valued alignment. Not agreement, but alignment. She believed that couples, especially in our social circle, should present a unified front. Disagreement, to her, wasn't just a difference of opinion. It was a public signal, a crack in the image. And I had just created one. The dinner ended politely. Of course it did. People like us don't let things fall apart in public. We finished the meal. We exchanged the usual pleasantries. We even made vague plans to meet again. But the energy had changed. Irreversibly. On the drive home, the silence was immediate, heavy, deliberate. Sloane stared out the window. I kept my eyes on the road. Finally, I spoke. You didn't have to say that like that. She didn't turn. You didn't have to say what you said at all. That's not the same thing. It is to me. Her tone wasn't angry. It was resolved. That was a professional setting, she continued. Those are people we interact with regularly. And you made it look like we're not on the same page. I exhaled slowly. So, I'm supposed to agree with you even when I don't? She finally turned toward me. No. Then a pause. You're supposed to understand when disagreement has consequences. That word stayed with me. Consequences. Not emotional consequences. Not relational consequences. Social consequences. Over the next few days, things didn't explode. They didn't even visibly deteriorate. But something subtle began to shift. Sloane became quieter around me, more observant, less willing to engage in the small, casual conversations we used to have. At events, she would speak for both of us more often, answer questions directed at me, redirect conversations before I could respond. At first, I told myself it was temporary, that we would talk it through. But we didn't, because every time I tried, the conversation circled back to the same point. You don't see the bigger picture. And eventually, I realized something uncomfortable. The bigger picture she was talking about didn't include space for me to think independently. It included me, but only in a specific role. Aligned, predictable, safe. Weeks later, we were invited to another gathering. This time at Nolan Prescott's estate outside Scottsdale, Arizona. A larger event, more people, more visibility, and I could feel the pressure before we even arrived. Sloan adjusted my jacket before we walked in. A small gesture, almost affectionate, but her words carried weight. Let's just keep things consistent tonight. I looked at her. What does that mean? She smiled slightly. You know what it means. And I did. Inside, the conversations flowed easily. Familiar faces. Familiar dynamics. At one point, a discussion started about a nonprofit initiative. A funding decision. A controversial one. I listened. Carefully. I felt Sloane's presence beside me. Not physically close, but mentally aware. Waiting. Someone asked my opinion. A simple question, but not a simple answer. I paused, and in that pause, everything became clear. This wasn't about one dinner or one comment. This was about who I was allowed to be. I could feel two versions of myself in that moment. One that would say the safe thing, the aligned thing, and one that would say the honest thing. And I knew, without needing confirmation, that only one of those versions would keep the relationship intact. So let me ask you something. In a moment like that, when honesty risks everything you've built with someone, do you choose truth or do you choose stability? I answer the question, honestly, not aggressively, not confrontationally, just honestly, and I didn't need to look at Sloan to know what that meant. The drive home that night was quieter than the first, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was empty, because something had already been decided. She spoke first. I don't think this is going to work. No anger, no hesitation, just clarity. I nodded, not because I agreed, but because I understood. And for the first time in weeks, there was no confusion. No tensión, just truth.